Captain, tell us the one thing in particular. We know that military readiness and preparedness is declining. How does that go to something as fundamental and necessary as our ability to build ships?
Our shipbuilding is absolutely in a disaster zone area right now. China has 250 times the shipbuilding capacity of the United States. Even Russia has something like 46 icebreakers. We don't have, our icebreaker program is 10 years behind. We just cannot get those ships built. And this is part of the master plan. And the master plan designed by the neocons, designed by the globalists who control the International Maritime Organization in London. They first went after the U.S. Merchant Marine, and the Merchant Marine's down to 80 ships internationally compared to China's over 5,000. Then they went after the Coast Guard. No one looked at when the hurricane came in North Carolina. What happens when hurricanes come in? Coast Guard, helicopters, big orange birds, land down and rescue. Where were they this time? Mainstream media did not answer that question. That's why, private citizens, patriots had to go in. Well, it's because the 70% of the Coast Guard helicopters were grounded. And now that the Coast Guard's nearly dead, they're going after the Navy. Why is this? Because Navy ships are very expensive. Air Force bombers are very expensive. What they want to build, what the industrial complex wants to build, is they want to build studies, they want to build algorithms, and they want to build very small things that are super expensive, like HIMARS, like Javelin missiles, because that's where the profit is. If you build a ship and you got to put $10 billion into a dry dock, well, you have to hire, thousands of workers, and you got to maintain that dry dock for 10, 20 years. Well, if you just did a study on why the shipbuilding, gave it to McKinsey or Deloitte, why shipbuilding isn't there, you have a $10 billion study where you get to pocket $9.9 billion of that, and then you get to do a new study on why it's broken. And better yet, let's give the Army in charge, because when you have thousands of tanks, you can lose that money a lot quicker than if you're building just 10 ships for the same price.
So, Captain, but help me understand. It's not for a lack of resources. Our military budget is nearly $1 trillion. It's $800 billion, not counting all the graft that we send overseas. And so why is it that Russia, which is a poor country, spends about $100 billion a year on defense? In fact, it's $84 billion. So they spend 1/10 of what we spend on defense. Why is it that Russia is able to build ships more efficiently than the United States? Help me understand this.
Well, the number one reason is the bureaucracy, the number of rules and regulations involved with this. So they have two ways that they can control things, and one is to suck all resources out. So that's what happened to my Merchant Marine. We used to be the Department of the Maritime Administration, the commandant in charge of that, used to be bigger than the FAA in DOT. Now it's down to 300 employees in DC working on policy. FAA has over 40,000 employees. So they just suck out, and the media, mainstream media, it doesn't cover shipbuilding. It doesn't cover merchant marine stuff. And where that apathy is, where the ignorance is, it's that's where they can just pull out and pull out shipbuilding. So they pulled out commercial shipbuilding. Navy has people know the Navy. They can't hide the Navy from mainstream media. So if they want to destroy the Navy and put more money into studies in the Army, like we said, what they had to do is the exact opposite. So FAA has 40,000 people. The shipbuilding and repair arm of the U.S. Navy, it's called NAVSEA. They have 83,000 people employed in that. And those 83,000 people have not delivered one single ship on time and on budget this century. And what they do is
so Captain, I have to how many of them have been fired because of that? Sorry to interrupt, but we have tight breaks here. How many have been fired because of that, Captain?
None have been fired. There's absolutely no accountability for all of this. We just had sabotage of welds at our biggest shipyard, HII, which does our aircraft carriers, our submarines. And not only has no one been fired, but they classify the reason for the sabotage, so we don't even have good info. That's what they do. They classify it, hide it from journalists like you and me, and then there's no accountability.